We'll talk about one of the strangest ships from the Clone Wars, the Hardcell transport, on today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Hope you guys are having a great day. Before we begin, you guys always ask for battle breakdowns and don't watch them. I uploaded one several days ago. I think it's really well done. Go watch it. Also, I used that video to announce that the new Star Destroyer top-down stickers and magnets you guys all asked for are now ready. You can make your own fleets. Next up, we'll have the Nebula Star Destroyer. We already have the side profile for that one. Then the Venator. Then, who knows? Maybe the Hardcell. Probably not. Either way, linked below or at eckhartslaughter.com. So, for a while now, we've been going over pretty much every single vehicle featured in the Clone Wars. Last episode, it was one which got almost no screen time or usage after its initial appearance. Honestly, kinda got the same thing going on here. So, we're talking the Hardcell transport. This is another vessel which first appeared at the Battle of Geonosis before kinda falling off the radar. Remember, Anakin tells the Lat to fire above the fuel cells? Well, that scene actually does a great job of breaking down the Hardcell and why it was such a ridiculous vehicle. So I want to first talk about how the Confederacy built up its military because they were in a tough position. Obviously, Sidious had plans for them, Count Dooku was cracking the whip, but the CIS had to prepare to fight a galactic-scale war without violating, at least super openly, the rules and regulations of the Republic. Now, some vessels, like the Munificent, for example, were simply repurposed from corporate defense fleets, but we also saw that the CIS eagerly also repurposed existing cargo or freight vessels for wartime. And when it comes to the Lucrehulk, that was something planned for quite a while, so it wasn't difficult. The Lucrehulk, as a specific example, was great because it was massive, it had a legitimate purpose, but once wartime came, you simply refit it with more weapons, you carry droid starfighters instead of cargo, and you've got a very powerful battleship. The Hardcell, not quite so much. So one thing you might notice immediately about this ship is that it does something quite rare for Star Wars. It has visible fuel storage. Most of Star Wars is magic. Obviously, spaceships need fuel, but look at the Millennium Falcon. There's no real obvious fuel tank, and that's the case for almost every ship. I'm not saying the Hardcell looks like a modern rocket or booster, but it's certainly a lot closer than what you get with an ordinary starship, complete with even its vertical takeoff style. Why was this? Well, as I've discussed many times on the channel, most ships in Star Wars use repulsor lift technology when working in atmosphere. Repulsor lifts are anti-gravitational devices. They let things hover or fly. Everything from Luke's speeder or a speeder bike on Endor, things which fly just barely above the ground, to snow speeders or the speeders on Coruscant. That's all done via repulsor lifts. The way I always imagine it is with that Millennium Falcon scene. You know, the one where they're escaping Tatooine in A New Hope. The repulsor lift is what keeps the ship in the air. Then some other engine probably also provides thrust, and that's why aerodynamics aren't important. As you may have guessed, the Hardcell is different. According to the Clone Wars campaign guide, the Hardcell class uses a cluster of primary thruster engines rather than the conventional repulsor lift engines found on most starships. So this thing is, as we do in the real world, using rockets to escape from a planet's atmosphere. So all of that fuel is needed to compensate for, well, a lack of space magic. The downsides are obvious. The benefit is that the Hardcell apparently was actually faster than many of its contemporary vehicles. There's a pretty funny segment in the new Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels I'd like to read. The Techno Union's most visible transport was the rocket-shaped Hardcell. In its base configuration, the vehicle utilized a series of 6 large thrusters that enabled it to quickly exit planetary atmospheres. Because of their size and energy output, the thrusters wreaked havoc on surrounding environments, but the Techno Union seemed unconcerned about any ecological impact or noise pollution. In addition to being loud, the Hardcell's engines were amazingly fuel inefficient, consuming hundreds of concentrated fuel slugs during every planetary exit. Despite their shortcomings, the Hardcell became a status symbol among Techno-Union officials. So the Hardcell was basically a space Cadillac. It was also made specifically for Skakoans like Wat Tambor. Most of the vessels, honestly, were used for business dealings and were heavily customized for the comfort of those traveling inside of it. So on Wat Tambor's, for example, he would have had a room where he could remove his pressure suit. According to the new Essential Guide to Vehicles and Vessels, Wat Tambor's ship was also heavily customized with both extra powerful deflector shields and an extremely advanced hyperdrive system, which allowed it to calculate jumps in seconds. One interesting note is that the Skakoan home system had 3 fuel-rich moons, partially explaining why these vehicles used fuel instead of repulsor lift technology. They could afford to splurge a little bit. The Hardcell often was armed with laser cannons and concussion missile launchers, although because of its, well, extreme weak points, you would not want to throw this thing in battle for any longer than you had to, and ideally the weapons of the Hardcell are simply covering for a retreat or a drop-off of supplies, troops, or equipment. Because yes, while the Hardcell was often used to ferry people between worlds before the Clone Wars, it often transported cargo, and of course could be used to move military equipment as well. So given everything I've said, probably not too surprising that the Hardcell did fall out of use after the Battle of Geonosis. With the Hardcell, you basically get the advantage of being able to retreat quickly through the rocket propulsion, but with the downside of just having a massive vehicle largely dedicated to storage and the overall vulnerabilities as well. The CIS also had alternatives. That was one of the benefits of having so many massive corporations working together. They brought their own starship designs. The Trade Federation CC-979 was a more practical lander. It had a great storage space, onboard maintenance and repair facilities. It was better armored, better armed, just overall more pragmatic, especially when you don't have to constantly replenish the rocket fuel. On a much larger scale, the core ship is also a really interesting option. That thing was not going anywhere fast, but unlike the Hardcell, it was incredibly well defended. The Diamond class, which is also present at the Battle of Geonosis, though most aren't aware of it, is also probably a better option. More heavily armed, better armor, and it can even do the whole vertical landing thing. Either way, I'm guessing the CIS saw a Hardcell be taken out by a single pass from a LAT gunship and figured we probably have better options, and they were right to think so. Overall, the CIS has got to be one of the most impractical designs from the Clone Wars. It was arguably bad in its civilian role. Throw it into a military conflict and it's going to flounder. Anyway, that's today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Again, link to the new stickers and magnets down below. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.